that peeking behind the bars? That's Hannibal. Who's that played by 4 different stars? That's Hannibal. And whose face is detachable? That's Hannibal. And who's everybody's favorite cannibal? That's Hannibal. Hello, everybody, and welcome to, you guessed it, the Macabre Podcast universe.
Hello.
Right?
Yep.
That's why we're here?
Yep.
And we are talking about a series called the Hannibal Lecter series. Well, I don't know if people call it that, but the Hannibal series or whatever. And we're on the second movie, which is the... Oh,
What?
You're giving me eyes.
What?
The second movie, which is The Silence of the Lambs. And this is one of the more famous movies ever made.
Uh-huh.
And it is...
It's one of the scariest movies ever made.
Yes, definitely. And it came out in 1991. That next year, it would win the Academy Award
For
Best Picture,
and
Best Director, Best Writing,
and
Best Lead Actress, Jodie Foster,
and
Best Actor, Anthony Hopkins. His
he's
might have been supporting.
Let me look it up.
But yeah, this movie was a phenomenon. We were not born yet.
Actor in a leading role.
Okay, that does make sense. He is the lead, like, male actor in that movie. So
Yeah.
I
We'll
agree
give it
with
to
that.
him.
And this just kind of marks a time when someone goes out and does something so weird and fresh and insane, and for the most part, and even through the annals of time.
Yes.
The annals of time, people just agree, like, yeah, it's a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my intro on The Silence of the Lambs.
When did you first see it?
I first saw it with some friends, I believe a year out of high school.
Yes.
And I think it's number 18 on IMDb's top 250. So I was working my way through a lot of those movies. And I was really excited to watch it. But I did watch it at someone's house, and her mom was there.
Did she watch the movie with you?
And I think she was like in the kitchen doing stuff while we were watching the movie in the living room. And there were several of us. And even though I believe she had seen the movie, and she was definitely on board with us watching Silence of the Lambs at her house.
Yeah.
It was just, the movie really got under my skin, but then beyond that, I think the context of watching it made me kind of go, oh, that's like a gross movie, and I don't really like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then throughout time, I've thought, like, no, it's good. And then this was the only time I've ever rewatched it.
Before that, you had never seen it on TV?
No.
You never a clip? Nary a clip?
I really hadn't. Okay.
You just knew it was a movie that had Anthony Hopkins in it?
And Jodie Foster, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I may have seen clips like played at the Academy Awards or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, in 1992 when you were not born yet? Well,
maybe they had like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I've seen clips, but I don't think I'd seen a scene from the movie. How about that?
Okay. Did you know what this movie was about prior to watching it?
Well, I think I assumed, I mean, this is, 7 or 8 years ago?
Yeah.
I think I assumed that she was trying to get Hannibal the whole movie, and I didn't realize there was, like, a serial killer.
Pretty early on, you're like, oh, he's already caught.
Right. What about your first time?
Watched it. See, I've seen a lot of it on TV growing up, but it was always from my memory, like, if it was on TV, depending on where it was at, my dad would change the channel quickly. So it like built up in my brain this forbidden movie that is really, really scary, but it was on TV a lot.
Sure.
And then I think when Blockbuster was still around, I rented it finally and was like, I'm going to figure out what this movie is. And I watched it and it was great. It really was like answering all these questions I had for years, because I'd say just most of it, but none of the questions had been answered.
Right.
So...
You know what's kind of funny is if you really think about this movie, as graphic as it is, I mean, for the most part, you could actually play most of the movie on TV.
Definitely. I was surprised, just because it's been a long time since I've seen it, that most of, I would say, the most graphic stuff, I mean, there definitely is graphic stuff for sure, but a lot of what you would think they would show, they don't show. And it actually made it scarier.
Yeah.
That they didn't show it. Like when the, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Crawford or the guy at the prison, like showed her a picture of the nurse that Hannibal like tore her tongue out of her face and like dislocated her jaw. Like we didn't see the picture, but he described it, and we see Jodie Foster's reaction.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I feel sick. I feel physically ill.
Yeah.
And we're like 15 minutes into the movie.
Well, the movie is a masterclass in tone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really wild. And so, do you know much about Jonathan Demme, Jordan?
I know what I told you last night. He made this movie. Blank Check did a series on him, and Scott Aukerman was a guest on one of those. Oh, and he directed Stop Making Sense.
Yeah. So he is. What's funny is I think I'd have to double check. I think this is the only movie of his that I've seen.
Yeah, I think me too.
Which is like, it's a pretty huge blind spot because he's one of the great. I think he's kind of like, maybe people don't talk about him as much as, you know, a Spielberg or George Lucas or something like that. But I think he's like right below the cusp of maybe 10 years from now, everyone will be like, how have you not seen 8 Jonathan Demme movies?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I listened to Blank Check's series on him, so I know quite a bit about him.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting about him is he's just a very personal and heartwarming and generous filmmaker.
Why do you say that?
So he just so his movies before this were a lot of comedies and I think a couple of slice of life kind of things. This is like,
I thought he did like action movies. Not action movies.
No. This would be like if the guy who did Moneyball was like, okay, I'm making a Hannibal movie, and you're like, what? You did?
Well, he made Foxcatcher, and that was pretty intense.
Oh yeah, that's a bad example actually.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So I mean, it would be like if, you know what, a better example would be like if Greta Gerwig said, the next movie I'm making is about a serial killer, and she makes the best like
Edgar
thriller.
Wright's new movie, you mean?
Yeah. So he is he's kind of known for that. He has movies like Married to the Mob, Running Wild, and they're funny and they're sweet and they're kind. And I know one of the things they talked about a lot in their series is that he's one of these directors that I think he had a pretty bad experiences on one of his earlier movies with working with crews. And from then on, he's like, no, I want to work with my friends.
Oh.
And so he's not one of these like Jack White guys where he's like, I want to push uphill to get artistic. He's like, no, I want to like hire someone that I trust and trust them to do their job. And we're friends. And watching the behind the scenes, it sounds like the experience on this movie was like friends hanging out, making a movie. And it was really fun for making The Silence of the Lambs. Huh. And there was a lot of great stuff like Anthony Hopkins. And we talk about this a lot, method acting.
Oh, he method acted?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is what I love.
Oh, yeah, you told me about this.
What I love is like in his interviews, and you know, I'm sure I'm not hearing the questions, but I'm sure they're going, how did you get into the mind of this crazy killer, and how are you sane? And all his answers are just like, yeah, I mean, I acted, and then when they yelled cut, I was done acting. That's what I do. I show up and I act, and then I'm done acting when they call cut. And
it's a job.
Jodie Foster and I are buds, and we had a good time, and it was a really fun shoot. As opposed to the killer in the last movie who was like, you know, stalking around set, not wanting to talk to people.
Yeah, brooding
and,
and stuff, yeah.
And even Ted Levine, the Buffalo Bill in this movie, I got a similar energy.
Really?
From him, where like him and that actress who was in the well, they went out of their way to make sure that they were like communicating with each other and not hurting each other.
I can see that going one of two, like both ways of, like the last movie, like making the choice to be aloof.
Yeah.
And make people kind of look over their shoulder when he walks into a room because he wants that energy to always be present so you can get more real performances in that person's opinion. And then I can also see, like, see them having a good relationship intentionally. It kind of reminds me of when kids are in horror movies. Like, what was the one that I think we talked about this? Oh, it was an Insidious. The kids were watching the lipstick demon putting on his makeup. Like they were, while they were applying all of it to him, the kid
James
was
Wan
there.
was like, come watch and see this person who's a normal person put on this scary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think, I think it's a good argument for, I know that different artists go about things different ways, and there's not a right way and a wrong way. But, you know, I watch a movie like this, and Hannibal's...
Well, there's a wrong way. But Jared Leto as Joker.
Well, I was going to actually say, I was actually going to speak about our newest Jonker, but I think that it's just like, I do think actors sometimes, especially when they're playing someone cartoony, they take it a little too seriously. Because the other thing is Anthony Hopkins kept saying, like, this is kind of like a cartoonish role. Like, this guy is weird, and if you don't play it just right, if you're not totally keyed into the performance, people will laugh when they're watching the movie. So he's not taking himself too seriously, and I love that. And that's, if I was an actor, I think I would want to do that rather than like only on set refer to me as Hannibal Lecter and only Jonathan Demme speak with me and stuff. And I don't know.
I mean, sometimes method acting can work in your favor. Daniel Day-Lewis famously pretended to have cerebral palsy in My Left Foot so that everyone could carry him around on set.
Yeah.
A joke, but also true.
Yeah. And method acting isn't bad.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad. I just think sometimes it's touted amongst film people and film watchers as like, this person is really incredible and they did all this stuff. And sometimes you just think, yeah, well, Joaquin Phoenix, you didn't have to do all that garbage. You could have just been a normal person and then done the Joker movie and given the exact same role, because it's not that interesting.
Do you know if Jack Nicholson is a method actor?
No.
Okay, because one of the most famous Jokers, he probably has the most fun out of every Joker I've seen on screen, besides Mark Hamill voicing Joker.
Oh, Mark Hamill.
He looks like he's having such a fun time, but he is completely embodying Joker in all the ways. And he probably, when they did cut, he's like, okay, well, can I take the makeup off now?
Yeah. And that's funny that you say that, because I was thinking about
a lot of people who do Joker cite, like, they're like, oh, I'm inspired by Jack Nicholson. Yeah. His performance. And it's like, but why did you have to like become that person off camera? During the shoot. And
this speaks to Anthony Hopkins like understanding the Hannibal Lecter character, because you know, a lot of times the Joker's just the best example because there's so many examples of it, and people for some reason at a certain point, I don't know if Joaquin Phoenix or Jared Leto ever read a Batman comic, but I don't know.
I hope so.
I don't know when they decided that this character, who's clearly a comic character and silly, at the end of the day, no matter what you say about Joker, he was created as a silly character. He's called the Joker. He should be a little bit fun.
I think a big part of it is Heath Ledger. And he also, though, they wrote that character funny and zany.
They did.
But The Dark Knight is known for being the gritty version.
I know.
That set a precedent for a lot of superhero problems that we have today. Trying to imitate that.
Yeah.
But like, so you think...
And people forget how fun Dark Knight is.
When
you rewatch it, it's not this dour,
But then you hear the rumors
movie.
of Heath Ledger never being able to shake off the bad feelings of being Joker and like how it affected him mentally. Whether or not that was true, I think he had a lot of deeper issues going on.
Yeah.
And
then it adds
playing
to this
a character.
Mythology.
Well, then because of him now, I hear so many people, like I even heard Bill Skarsgård had issues when he was Pennywise, and it's like, I don't even know if that's true, if I can believe that.
Yeah.
Maybe he just had a fun, like, not even a fun time. Maybe he just showed up and did his job. Just because he's a clown, we have to assume that he has mental issues now, or not mental issues, but it feels like he needs to get help.
Well, I mean, that's the Stephen King thing that you and I talk about a lot, where people are always asking Stephen King, how do you come up with these stories? You're so, like, what happened to you? And he goes, I'm a writer. I make up things. It's my imagination. Yeah. Have you never heard of an imagination? You can be a normal person and think of crazy stuff.
Yep.
Especially when that's your job.
Yep. He's had a, pretty normal life.
Yeah. It's not everything has to be so twisted.
Yeah.
But one of these days, Who knows when it'll happen? We're going to be talking about a lot that goes into Jokers. So
Yeah.
who knows though whenever that'll be.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all that to say, Jonathan Demme directed this movie.
He's a sweet guy.
Yeah, I gotta watch Stop Making Sense. I've been meaning to watch that for so
Yeah,
long.
I need to watch it too. Ever since we watched that Documentary Now episode, I think that will be funnier to me.
Yeah.
Once I watch this.
The screenplay is by Ted Talley, who up to this point was mostly a playwright.
Oh, interesting.
And he also did the screenplay for 12 Strong. He didn't come back for Hannibal, but he did the screenplay for Red Dragon. And I didn't even know that this existed, but he did the screenplay for the adaptation of Cormac McCarthy's book, All the Pretty Horses.
Whoa, wait, did they make a movie?
They made a movie starring Matt Damon. And I forgot who directed it, but it was someone that it was
I'm gonna look it up.
I think it's like an actor. But anyway,
When did it come out?
Ooh,
I'm looking it up. Why am I
don't know.
asking? Came out in 2000. The kid from E.T. is in it.
Wow.
But I don't think he was a kid because this is 2000. Billy Bob.
Billy
which
Bob
makes
Thornton.
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
To me. Penelope Cruz is also in it.
That's right.
Sam Shepard, Robert Patrick. Wow, a lot of people. Guys, if you haven't read Cormac McCarthy, do yourself a favor and read him.
But don't read Child of God or Children of God.
No, you should
That
definitely
book sucked.
read No Country for Old Men. That should be your jumping off point.
Yeah, that's a great American novel.
And then follow it up with The Road.
I haven't read that one yet.
And then read that trilogy, the Horses trilogy.
The Borders trilogy.
The Borders trilogy that has that book in it.
Yeah. Okay, so the score is by Howard Shore. Of course, we've talked about Howard Shore before with Lord of the Rings. The score to this movie, come on.
Really good.
Really good score. Very atmospheric. I like that he leans on atmosphere over melodies and stuff. Just a very haunting score. Tak Fujimoto did the cinematography.
Very good job.
He's a big Demme guy.
Cool.
And he also did the second unit camera on Star Wars, 1977, A New Hope.
First one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he did Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Gladiator, Sixth Sense, and The Happening as well. So
Whoa.
the guy's a genius. And it's cool.
We need to watch The Sixth Sense, Micah.
I know. It's been a long time.
I keep referencing it and you don't remember anything.
Yeah, I just remember the twist and that he's at dinner at one point.
Who's at dinner?
Willis.
Bruce Willis when his wife is...
Yeah.
Okay.
This movie comes out February 14th, 1991. It has a budget of $19 million. And granted, this is an R-rated movie. It's number one at the box office for like 5 weeks in a row. And it makes 130 domestically and 272 worldwide. That's a smashing success.
Yeah.
Especially, they put this movie out on Valentine's Day. How crazy is that?
Whoa, that's weird. I mean, that's got to be intentional.
Yeah. I feel like it's also got to be, I don't know, it makes sense as like a date night movie.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I think you'd walk out and you'd be like, I wish we hadn't gone and
This is
seen
a
this
movie
movie.
that you see in theaters, and then afterwards you go to a diner and you talk about it for 3 hours.
Yep. And we're going to give you one of those hours now, at least.
Yeah.
So the rights to the book were bought by Orion Pictures, one of the producers on this movie, who also produced Terminator.
Ah, okay.
And they bought it, and then Gene Hackman was gonna direct it and star in it. And
as who?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but he put up like half of the amount of money they needed to get it off the ground as like collateral. Let's get it started.
Oh.
Then Gene hires Ted Talley, the screenwriter, and the screenwriter gives him like half of a draft. And Gene Hackman says, "This is too violent for me. I can't do this.
Too violent for Gene."
And Orion Pictures gives him his money back.
Wow. Did he not read the book?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
But then one of the producers, Mike Manavoy, he sent a script to Demme, or someone sent a script to Demme, and no one really knows if Demme even read it. He just was like, "Oh, like a horror thriller? No, not gonna do it." And then Mike Manavoy, one of the producers, said, read this book and sent him The Silence of the Lambs and said, you have to read this book. And once he read it, Demme said, okay, I'll do it. And again, keep in mind, this is a weird choice to have Jonathan Demme do it, because I think this is the key to this movie is Jonathan Demme. Even more so than Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster. Okay. I think it's Jonathan Demme. But of course, he brought them in.
Coming from a guy who's only seen this one Jonathan Demme movie.
Yeah. But Jodie Foster had read the book before they started making this movie. She was like talking to her manager and stuff. She's like, I want to star in this.
Oh, wow.
She said,
and this book came out when? In the 80s?
I think 88.
Like the late 80s. So she probably read it soon after it came out and was like, oh, someone's making a movie about this. Yeah. Especially since we had Red Dragon too. So
yeah, so she's like, I want to be in this. She's telling her manager, and she tells Demme. I think she even meets with him and says, no, she doesn't meet with him yet, I don't think. But she says, I want to be in this. And he's like, that's great. I'll leave you a second because I'm casting Michelle Pfeiffer in the movie. Because he had worked with her before.
There's no way.
It's a different movie. That's for sure. But he'd worked with Michelle Pfeiffer. They were friends.
Oh
and
my
he says,
gosh.
You know, she's going to be in the movie.
Okay.
Michelle Pfeiffer reads the script and she says, this is way too violent for me. I can't be
Oh
in
my
this
gosh.
movie. And so then Jonathan Demme meets with Jodie Foster and she says some stuff about how she wants to play this role and like emphasizing this woman who's in a man's world and how she will do whatever it takes to save this other woman in the movie. And
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's like how she saw the character, and she said she like has to do it. And when he heard that,
he's like, she gets it.
Well, he was like, oh, that like unlocked the movie for me. So then even he was able to go, now I know what I'm doing. And like now I get it. And so so they're campaigning for the part. She gets it, and then finally, a funny thing is they start shooting the movie, and there's like some jokes and stuff that they're throwing in the movie.
Oh.
And Jodie Foster is going, What are you doing, Demme? What are you doing? And he's like, just trust me. And then as the shooting progressed, it got rid of all that stuff. And when she watched the movie, that none of that's in there.
Oh, okay.
And in an interview with her, she was saying, I think he was just kind of doing what he knew and getting his feet wet those first couple weeks.
Okay.
And I just had to trust him. And then by the time they started working on the movie, like further down into shooting.
I feel like you can get swept away by the story very quickly.
Yeah. So Colleen Atwood, who's a huge costume designer, she's behind the mask, the Hannibal mask. So she's like the designer of that mask.
Oh, okay.
And they were going to do more to it, but they got the like plaster, whatever it's made out of, from the company. And they were going to, design it. And then she just looked at it. She's like, oh, this is perfect. And they didn't make any changes. Anthony Hopkins improvised the sucking sound, as a joke. And he thought that they would cut it. And then when he saw the movie, he's like, oh, you kept it in. Okay. And then the victim, who's in the well.
Yes.
I should have looked up her name, but that's your job, I guess.
Yes.
She gained 25 pounds.
Wow.
Because as we find out later... Brooke Smith.
Is the actress's name.
Okay. As we find out later, the Buffalo Bill is skinning these women, so he likes them to be on the bigger side so that...
He can starve them and their skin loosens.
Ugh. And then the moths in this movie are all real moths.
Oh, moth.
Moths. Yeah, it's a hard word to pronounce. And Ray Mendez is the moth wrangler. And he said it was impossible at that time of year to get those death head moths that they needed from Asia, because they're like in...
There's a season for them.
Yeah, yeah. And so they made these fake nails, and they put them on the backs of native moths. Okay. So... That's kind of cool.
Oh, so they're not the real thing.
They're not the death head moth, but they are actual moths.
Yeah. But does that actual moth exist?
Yes,
the kind
it does.
that they wanted. Okay.
And that's what they couldn't get.
Yeah,
because of the time of year.
Okay. They put nails on the back.
Like
fingernails?
like fake fingernails.
Yeah.
And they painted them with that skull thing.
Yeah.
And then they put those on their back.
That is impressive.
I know. And then all of those moths flying around, especially when we're in the
house.
killer's house.
Yeah.
Those are all on like tiny strings, and the moth wrangler has a harness around the moths, and he's like behind the camera, like throwing all these moths in front of the camera, like a puppeteer.
I'm genuinely speechless.
Isn't that kind of cool?
Did you see any footage of that?
Not behind the scenes.
How come no one snapped a pic?
Maybe they did. I don't know. And then I know I'm doing a lot. There's just so much cool stuff about the movie. But there's a scene where Buffalo Bill is pulling back the cocoon on a moth, and that is real. That is not.
That's part that we saw, and we were like, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was like an animatronic or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I thought he was like pulling out the head.
No.
Of a live one.
So and what they did is, so they had these cocoons, and once the cocoon started rattling, and they were like about to hatch, they put them in like a fridge, which slows them down because they're cold-blooded. And then before they're ready to shoot, they took them out, and then he would grab it and wait till it's, shaking, and then he'd pull back the cocoon, and it's totally safe and fine.
Gosh, that is so insane.
Isn't that cool?
That's insane.
Because all of that would be CGI now.
Uh-huh.
And, and I mean, they said that no moths were harmed in the making of the movie, so it seems like this was a good route to go. But it's wild.
Yeah.
And then finally, the autopsy woman is a real actress that's laying there on the table.
Oh, okay.
So that's not.
It wasn't a.
I thought it was a dummy.
Yeah.
But she's sitting there on a cold day of shooting with all this crazy makeup and with like a Tootsie Roll kind of thing stuck in her jaw that they're pulling out of her mouth.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder how long that shoot took for her.
Oh, man. And Jodie Foster was saying how it was really, really cold. And she was
really?
like MVP for this girl. She's like the unsung hero of this movie.
Man.
So that's all the notes I got.
So extra notes of the like serial killer of the story is he is taken from some real serial killers. One of them you had mentioned, Ted. They got some inspiration from Ted Bundy. Inspiration sounds wrong, but
yeah. Well, and most of this is Thomas Harris because it's all it's in the novels.
Oh yes,
but
it is
broken arm. Faking.
I think worth noting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like Tom Bundy. Ted Bundy is one of the I guess serial killers he pulled inspiration from, but another big serial killer that he pulled inspiration from was Ed Gein, and he is was active during the 40s and is a very interesting individual. I wrote a recount reveal about it, so go read about it, recountreveal.com. He was a body snatcher, so he dug up graves of women he knew were recently buried and skinned them. And he has a pretty sad past where he grew up with a dad that was kind of a deadbeat, and the mom would not allow him and his brother to have friends, and told them that all women are from the devil besides me. Mm-hmm. So eventually the dad dies, so it's just the boys and the mom, and then the brother wants to get married to a woman who has children, and then shortly after that the brother is dead from a fire. And then
is that a quote fire from a fire?
I mean, I believe like cause of death is asphyxiation, but later on, I think with advancement of forensics, I think some people have speculated that there was like blunt force trauma on his head. So like maybe he was hit, knocked out, fire was started, because him and Ed Gein were, I think, doing brush fires like in the field because they lived on a farm. Okay. And a fire did get out of control, but was it man-made? Was it intentional, out of control, or not? So it was just Ed Gein and his mom, and he was reported to be a very quiet person, but also a nice person that didn't really talk to anybody. And when the mom died, he became kind of a recluse in a way. And a local woman was murdered, or she went missing, and the investigation took investigators to his farmhouse where they found her body. And then they found, I believe there's another person they believe that he had killed, and then that's when they discovered that he had been body snatching.
Yeah.
Because then they go into his house, and it's one of the worst hoarding situations that you could fathom. But the only rooms in the house that were spotless was his mother's room. Like, always clean.
And this is the inspiration for the Psycho novel.
Yes.
And then the Psycho movie.
Yes. Because it's a man who's obsessed with his mom. So you find out, they go into his house. I won't say all the things that he did because some of it is really graphic and horrific, but he did, there were like lampshades made out of human skin, chairs made out of human skin, all of it women.
Oh, man.
And then they also discovered that he was building or creating a suit out of skin because he wanted to become his mom.
That's crazy.
And that's where you get like, it's like, oh my gosh, that's Psycho.
Yeah.
Like big vibes of that. But this movie is about a person who is sewing together a body out of human skin because he wants to become a woman.
Yes. Do you remember that story that not story, it happened where someone who went to Cascade, our old high school, their grandma was in the Holocaust. Do you remember this?
With the lady that came to speak at the Holocaust? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that lady.
And she, while she was in a concentration camp.
She was like a maid, though, for someone.
Yeah. So she became like a maid for, I forget.
Like an SS guard, I think.
Well, it was this woman, and I don't remember her name, but she's like one of the most famous Nazis ever. This woman, and she was like I think she was a doctor. I'm getting some of my facts wrong. But when she was like doing up the house and stuff, the Nazi always said like never go into that room, and she kept saying that. And then one day she went into that room, and there was like a couch with like human skin on it, and like a lampshade and all this stuff.
And they were using soap made out of from the fat.
Oh, I don't even remember.
I remember her saying that.
And that was the wildest thing to hear, and because we saw the woman in real life. I mean, like, and gosh, kind of like of course it's a very, very sobering and a sad thing that happened, but it was kind of unbelievable that we had the opportunity to actually see someone in person who survived the Holocaust and concentration camps
and survived witnessing that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah. Let's end now.
Okay, so going to actors. So we have, as mentioned, Jodie Foster. She plays Clarice. Guys, it's Jodie Foster. If you haven't seen her in a movie, you're wrong because you have. There is a picture of her on IMDb with her and Dave Bautista.
You got to scroll back one.
So she was already one of the coolest ladies alive, but now she's even cooler because I'm just assuming they're buds. But she is in Contact, Hotel Artemis, Elysium,
Taxi Driver.
What's that other Scorsese movie where she's a kid? One of her first roles.
Alice doesn't live here anymore. Jinx, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I mean, it's Jodie Foster. Oh, and Panic Room.
Yeah, she's just
she's
an
a powerhouse,
undeniable actress. I mean, of course I've not seen all of her movies, but everything I've seen her in, she has a quality that not many actors have, where you just go like, nobody else could have done it.
I agree.
And I mean, I feel that strongly about The Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, me too.
If you put anyone else in that role, I think the movie is not as good. I mean, she really, really brings it in this movie.
She does.
And in this viewing, I was like more keyed into her than I was Hannibal.
Yeah, me too.
I think the first time you're just overtaken by Hannibal because it's
he demands
an electric
the attention
performance.
Yeah.
But this time I was just like so keyed into her and her emotional story as well.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well-deserved Oscar.
But Anthony Hopkins does play Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Guys, it's Anthony Hopkins.
Fair enough.
I'm really not even going to go over his filmography, other than he played C.S. Lewis in a movie.
Well, let me hit you with one thing on him is Jonathan Demme saw David Lynch's The Elephant Man.
Okay.
And that's why he wanted to cast him in the movie. Because he was a doctor in that movie and wanted to kind of take that role and flip it.
I was listening to Stuff You Should Know About Elephant Man, and they talked about how that movie, that David Lynch's movie, is why Bradley Cooper wanted to become an actor, which makes sense because he was in that Broadway run of The Elephant Man, and I always thought that was so random.
Yeah,
but it's not.
Yeah, well, and it's weird to be like one of the most handsome people in the world, and then star in The Elephant Man as the Elephant Man. And he wasn't in makeup and stuff in the play, I don't think. And it's kind of like...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I think it was like a minimalist play. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I didn't see it. But, I mean, the cover is Bradley Cooper standing there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's true.
And it's like, you are a beautiful man. You're not the Elephant Man.
We know how Micah feels.
Yeah.
Cassie Lemons plays Clarice's friend, Ardelia Mapp. She directed Harriet.
Really?
Yes.
The woman at the end that they kind of like put the last piece of the puzzle together?
She directed Harriet.
Huh.
She also directed...
Wow, that's cool.
An episode of Luke Cage.
Good for her.
Some other episodes of stuff, and then some movies I've never heard of. But she's also, as an actress, she's in Candyman, ER, Waist Deep.
Candyman, the one that's still coming out?
No. 1992's Candyman.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then Scott Glenn plays Jack Crawford. He is in The Hunt for Red October, Backdraft, Sucker Punch, Greenland. What's the other thing that you said yesterday?
He is Stick in Daredevil.
Oh, Daredevil.
The Daredevil series.
And he is also in Castle Rock, I guess.
He's got to be like a warden or something,
he's
right?
like... No, he's in season 1. He's Sissy SpaceX husband.
Yes.
Cool. I think that's where I'm really remembering him from.
Yeah. It was interesting seeing how different he played it than the guy in Manhunter who's playing it.
I thought they both did an excellent job.
I loved both performances,
Me too.
but one was like Chicago cop, angry, anguish, and this guy played it like
very cool.
Very cool. I'm in control. I want to study these people, and I want to solve this murder.
Well, I became like in an interest, like kind of suspicious of him because of when Hannibal asked Clarice, "Why is Crawford asking you to do this? Do you think he wants to sleep with you?" And it's like this movie has been very heavily themed about sexism. So it's like, what is this guy's intention? Because she's a student. Right. Anyway, Anthony Held plays Dr. Frederick Chilton, the guy in charge of the prison that Hannibal is in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
X-Men: The Last Stand, where he's in Red Dragon, and it's the same character.
Cool.
Alone, and then a lot of TV shows.
I did not see him at the end of the movie, but he
was there. I saw him.
How have I always missed that?
This is the first time I saw him because I was like, if he's having a friend for dinner, it has to be someone we've already seen. And then I saw him and I was like, oh, of course, that's like his nemesis.
No, but for me, I always was like, oh, I'm having an old friend for dinner. I'm thinking, oh, okay.
There's two old people getting off the plane as he's saying that, like literally.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking he just knows these random people.
Yeah.
We don't need to know who they are. And then when I was watching the behind the scenes, someone was talking about that scene and saying how he's stalking Chilton. And then I'm going, what?
Well, you know what they said,
what
remember?
Is his name again?
Chilton. But he made a deal with the senator, Chilton, to get Hannibal to her to give her information. I think one of the deals was this trip. And that's why Hannibal knew to go there.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's just funny. It's one of those things that I've never noticed. And had I not watched the behind the scenes, I never would have known that he was stalking him. Yeah. Unless they had talk about it in the next movie.
Yeah.
I just had no idea.
Brooke Smith plays Catherine Martin, the woman in the well, or the pit. She is in Bad Company, Fair Game, Labor Day, Big Sky, Bombshell, The Act. Oh man, she is active. She's even in The Good Doctor. And then Ted Levine plays James Gumb.
And we've talked about him on our Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom episode.
Cool. I think... We good?
Yeah, it does also have Charles Napier, who is the cop in Rambo, and he's a pretty big actor.
Who's that?
So, have you seen Rambo?
Once.
He's like the main bad guy.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's a great actor.
A lot of people in this movie, like almost everyone that we saw on screen, is like, oh, seen him in this.
Yeah. This was a movie that I had to fight my look at what else they're in and what I recognize them from on IMDb because I was like, no, I'm watching this movie. I'm only looking down to take notes. So the movie begins, as all movies do. As in, it just begins. And we're at Quantico, and we're seeing Jodie Foster go through training, a little bit of training. And then pretty soon she's pulled aside.
Crawford wants to see her.
Yes, he wants to see her. And he begins saying how, well, she notices on the wall that there's all these pictures of the Buffalo Bill killings.
He's claimed his 5th victim as one of the headlines.
Yeah. And so we're kind of laying the groundwork for that. And she seems to be slightly disturbed, but also interested by the wall of
she is a student training to be an FBI agent.
Yeah. And then also the camera's just like floating.
Oh, yeah.
The camera work in this movie, come on.
Really good.
All about it. It's just floating with her. And pretty much except for the scenes that have the killer, it's like all just her perspective.
Yeah.
And it's all like shot with the intent of we're in her brain. We're seeing the world the way she sees it.
Yep.
And so, and there's in that first scene where they're talking, Crawford and her, there's already a ton of close-ups. And some of them are down the barrel of the camera. And you don't see that very often.
No.
Especially because this movie probably has like 50 to 100 of those shots in it.
And I think they're really effective with Hannibal because you feel like you're too close to him when you're told to not get close to him.
Yes.
Because they tell Clarice that. So then
and
the
it feels
camera
like
puts
he's
you
talking
right there.
to you.
Yeah. Oh,
so it's really creepy.
So Crawford wants her to go interview or go ask Hannibal some questions about Buffalo Bill. So they're basically desperate at this point, and they've been asking other serial killers in prisons for any help. Basically, help us get into the mind of this person because you're a serial killer. So he wants her to go to Hannibal and just give him a questionnaire.
Yeah.
And
I did not remember him showing up like in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, me too. I
thought he was like 20, half hour. And
honestly didn't remember that she was a student.
I didn't either. But I also remembered him showing up, and he's in my head, he's in 2, maybe 3 scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
But he's in this movie a lot. Yeah. I thought this was one of those roles that people always say, people think that Hannibal's in the movie for a long time, but he's actually only in 10 minutes of screen time.
Compared to
way more than that.
Yeah, compared to the last movie, Will Graham already had a relationship with Hannibal.
Yeah.
This movie, she's meeting him for the first time.
Right.
So it's just great how much time they do get together.
Yeah. And I love just how, I know that this isn't really them making a sequel to Manhunter.
Yeah. Right.
But I love, love, love how Manhunter looks so different from this movie. And these movies they do not look like they're part of the same universe.
Uh-huh.
And I'm hoping, because no 2 directors have directed, or no one director has directed 2 of these movies, I'm hoping that they're all pretty distinct in their visual language. That is like my hope, because that would just be so interesting to me. But anyway, so she's being prepped, as you are, the audience, about this Hannibal character and how he's no good. And
it's like if you're going to pass him anything, it can't have a paperclip, a staple, nothing. It can only be paper. No pens, no nothing. Don't get close to the glass.
Don't get close to the glass.
I mean, it almost says
don't give him personal
don't
information.
Give him any personal information about yourself because you don't want him in your head.
Yeah.
So she goes there.
And as she's going through the hallways.
No, wait, I think it's worth noting beforehand. She gets to the prison, and she first is meeting with Chilton. And she basically like, I'm from the FBI. I need this from you.
Yeah.
And all he cares about is how pretty she is and how he wants to show her a good time in Baltimore tonight. And that's probably the first time a man has hit on her, but there will be a lot more of men hitting on her in this movie. And
he also kind of belittles her in a way where he says, "Oh, this is actually a smart idea for Jack because Hannibal hasn't seen a woman in 8 years, so this is smart that he's having you come down here."
Yes,
belittling her actual like
her credibility as
yes,
a person.
yes.
Because later on, she asks Crawford, I think, like, why are you keeping me in the dark about Hannibal? Because she kind of is figuring out that Crawford didn't send her just to give him a questionnaire. Like, there's ulterior motives. To which Crawford says, I can't let you know everything because then he'll find out, you know? But then at the same time, that's just him not believing that she can handle it. Maybe because she's a woman. I don't know. Maybe he did believe that she would get something different or more from him because she's a woman.
Yeah. I think a lot of it goes both ways on all those things with Crawford.
Definitely. So, so she's take a lot of walking down hallways to get there, showing you a labyrinth, almost as if it's like, how is she going to get out kind of feeling?
Yeah, yeah. As soon as she's in like the section right outside of his cell, the lights are now red.
Yes.
And it's very distinct.
And I got to point out, the guy who plays Barney is so sweet.
Yes.
Love Barney.
He's good.
He's very encouraging.
Yep.
So she walks slowly down the hall to his cell, and we see some other people. This is a type of solitary confinement, sort of, because there's only one person to a cell in this. You know, it's like high maximum security area.
So she's walking down, and she begins speaking with Hannibal Lecter. Now, when she rounds the corner, the camera again, it's her perspective, and I also in the behind the scenes, Anthony Hopkins, this was his choice and idea of you come around the corner and he's just standing there. He's not sitting down. He's ready to talk or whatever. And already it's just like, an unbelievable performance. And you've seen him for 1 second.
Oh my gosh, I know. And when he's asking for her credentials and she shows him her credentials and he's telling her to get closer and she extends her arm. But then he still wants her to get closer. And you're just like in your brain, like, don't get near. Like you were told not to get near him, even though there's plexiglass between
and it's
you.
all a power move because he's staring at her face and then he looks at the credentials for maybe a second and then looks back at her.
But he also proves, we all know that he's super intelligent, but he in that time is like, oh, your credentials are about to expire.
Yeah.
Realizing that she's a student.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
And what I love about this exchange and all of the Hannibal stuff in this movie is they really emphasize, which I'm sure it's all in the source material, they really emphasize that he used to be a psychiatrist. Not in the fact that they keep mentioning it, but just in his actions and how he's speaking.
And how he's asking questions and what questions he's asking.
Yeah.
So he obviously is immediately interested in Clarice and is probably just as interested in why she was sent to him. Because everything's a game, so he's trying to figure it out. Yeah. She explains what she's there to explain, hoping to get some information that he can give her about how Buffalo Bill operates, or any information of what you could think of to give her.
And I love how she's talking, and they're starting to kind of get somewhere, and then she goes, "Well, I have this questionnaire," and he goes, "Clarice, you were doing so good,
yeah,
and now you're this lazy transition. It's no good. It's no good."
Yeah,
they're like. There's never a point in the movie where he is not in control of everything around him. Yes,
and I think, too, for her being belittled so often, especially at this point in the movie, and, like, people keep telling her, like, oh, you're just a student. He sends someone of the student body to come here. Oh, he sends a woman to come here. But you see, she's giving it right back. Like, she is, like, top of her class and is going to be a great detective when she is able to, like when she's done with the school. So
yeah,
it's also like, oh, I mean, she wasn't a random selection.
No,
in a lot of ways.
she is capable of doing this job.
So what does she learn from this interaction?
Well, she doesn't learn anything, and she starts leaving, and then there's a man, and he throws some seed at her, if you will, and that's nasty.
Yeah,
and then.
Hannibal calls her back
screaming.
And he's
like, Clarice, come here.
And he then, like apologizes for what happened.
Yeah, he says like, I don't stand for that sort of thing, and that's wrong.
And then he gives her a name, something Moffat.
Yes, and he says something like, you're gonna have to do it yourself. And to which she is able to figure out he's referring to this old storage unit that he had.
What I found interesting is because she's trying to figure out who this person is that he's talking about, and what they do know about him is that he destroyed pretty much any document of a person existing before he murders them. him prepping to murder someone, is he basically erases them from the planet. Therefore, he can't find who this person is. But through her good investigating, it's not really a person, it's a storage unit that she's supposed to find.
I kind of missed that.
I mean, I don't know whose it is. I think I'm wondering if it's Hannibal's or the person's head who's in there, if it's theirs. I'm not totally sure.
I think they said it was Hannibal's.
Okay.
But yeah, so she goes to this thing and she figures out that him saying Hester Moffat is an anagram of the rest of me.
Yeah.
And so the rest of me at the do-it-yourself storage. So she goes there. She's going through the storage. It's very weird, very creepy. And then she pulls back on this car and she looks inside, and there is a pickled head.
A jarred head.
Of
a man in makeup.
Oh, is he in makeup?
Yeah, he was in drag.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that.
You didn't notice the eyelashes?
Well, he's all puffed up and stuff. So I was just oh man, he looks grotesque. That's all I.
No, it's definitely that because of what we discover about it.
Yeah, and so anyway, doing all that, and then she visits Hannibal again. Mm-hmm. So already we got 2 visits in a half hour. And then he basically says, yeah, I'll help you with Bill, but you're going to have to, tell me stuff about you.
Is this at the point where he admits that he knows who the person is? Or is it a little bit later? Because at one point he admits that he does know. And through investigation too, I think she also discovers that this person had been a patient of his for a brief moment.
Oh,
Buffalo Bill had been.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, he starts asking her questions about herself, which is I find interesting because when she first has the encounter with him, he's saying she's probably just some girl who is one generation away from being white trash.
Yeah.
And then we find out through flashback, but also through this questioning, that she was an only child of a single father. The mother died when she was really young, and her father was a town marshal.
Yeah.
Find out that her dad died on duty.
What is this, Contact?
So orphaning her. And I think we get only as far as she's taken to cousins in Montana and she runs away after 2 months.
Yeah.
And that's the only...
And we don't know why.
And what's interesting is we don't he's so interested about her because of his nature, but because of her information that she's giving as a viewer, it's who is she?
Yeah.
And why did she run away?
Yeah, and in my head, I'm just thinking, oh yeah, the uncle was a bad dude to her.
Which is what he said.
And she says, no, that's not it. And I'm going, it's got to be it, though, until they explain what happens. Mm-hmm. And it's so much different than what I could have thought of, really, in a very interesting and cool way.
Yeah.
So Hannibal's going to help out. And then we have the flashback, not the flash, but we go to Memphis, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And there is this woman, and she's coming home.
She's singing to Tom Petty.
Yeah, American Girl. And then there's this man who is trying to get his couch into his car.
His creeper van.
And he's got a broken arm. Mm-hmm. And this is the Ted Bundy thing. So Ted Bundy would do this.
Yes.
And then the woman's like, oh, let me help you.
And he says, oh, yeah, if you get into the back, we can push it all the way into the back. So get in the car.
Yeah.
Oh, my stomach hurts so bad.
You know what is cool, though? The way it's shot and the way Levine is acting, I really, only because I know what this movie is, am I doubting what he's doing. You know, he's doing such a good job of not doing a close-up where he's get into the back.
Oh, yeah. He's very normal.
Yeah, he's very normal, and it seems like a guy who really just can't get this couch up. Mm-hmm. And it feels like, if I was there, that would probably be the same thing.
Which we do learn early on and throughout the movie. He has killed several women at this point.
Yeah.
And at one point, Clarice, she's looking through all the case files, and Crawford's asking her, who is this person? What kind of profile are you thinking of this person? And she is saying all the things that she thinks he is based on the profile. And one of it is he is getting a taste for killing people. And part of it is how they found the bodies and what state they found him in. And she's saying that he's no longer becoming impulsive, as if this is becoming easy to him.
Yeah.
Because he's already gotten away with it. They know of, I think, 5 times.
5 at this point, yeah.
And I think it is interesting that she's profiling him as it is a white male age 25 to 45 because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Very, I just love that kind of when they when they pepper in that forensic stuff into things.
Yeah, and so he kidnaps a girl. He has this one of the grosser things that he does, which pretty much everything is pretty gross. But he rips her shirt so you
he
sees
asked
her back.
Are you a size 14?
Yeah. And then he rips her shirt back or cuts it or something, and then he just like puts his hand on her back and he's like, okay.
No, he says, oh, good.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. And then this is when Clarice and Crawford, they go to the funeral home where I believe it was the 5th body was found.
Recent body had been found. Yeah.
And this is when we see her flashback to her dad at the funeral. And there's a great scene where Jack Crawford meets like the marshal of that town, and he says,
and it's a room full of the police officers.
Yeah, and he says, "Hey, can we talk in this other room? You know, I don't want to
offend her.
Don't want to offend her." And the way it's shot too, it's like all these police are just looking down on Jodie.
It's all like the camera's like tilted upwards, like we're looking up into from her perspective, looking up into their face, and then we're looking down on her.
And Demme said he purposely tried to cast every officer to be tall, like considerably taller than Jodie Foster.
Okay.
As best as he could do that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they're doing that, and you're kind of like, it's a good scene, but it's like a great scene once they talk about it in like a scene later. But they get the body out, and well, before they do that, she tells all the guys to leave the room, all the other cops, and they're not really listening. And she's like, "Go on, get out, go." And then finally they kind of shuffle out, kind of
like, okay,
whatever. Yeah. And then they're analyzing the body, and she notices that there's something in her throat, and she pulls out this cocoon and pull it back, and then in the next scene we'll find out that it's the death head moth.
But she is also just showing her attention to detail, and she's, because of her training, what kind of person this woman was. She has 3 ear piercings, so she's not determined not to be a local woman, and because of her nail polish, because she's like, that's town, like that person's a townie. Yeah. And then they flip her over and see that there's 2 diamond marks of skin removed from her.
And the makeup in this movie and the special effects are really impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, this is grody stuff.
Yeah.
And they did a wonderful job. And that's a real actress just sitting there doing her thing.
Being still.
Yeah.
Breathing shallow.
Not shivering in the cold.
Yeah.
So all of that craziness. And then we're leaving in the car again with Jack and Clarice, and she says something to the effect of, you shouldn't have told that marshal.
Well, I like how he asked her about it. He's like, that really smoked you, didn't it? When I asked him to leave with me into the other room. And she says, it mattered. What you did mattered.
Yeah. And I think before that, she says, all the other policemen saw what you did, and that mattered.
Yeah.
And so she's saying, like, you did something, like, she's not letting him off the hook, even though he says, I was just trying to clear out the police and find something out. And she goes, no, what you did mattered. He was being sexist.
Because it taught the other policemen how to view her.
Yeah. So good. And so then she meets her entomologist friends, and they talk about the death head moth. One guy asks her out.
Pretty immediately.
Yeah, and it's almost, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like he is the only one in the movie of the people that are like looking down on her or treating her like a woman, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. He's the only one where it's almost like, he just asks her.
I think part of it is the way he did it. It was very casual and like
it didn't feel sexist.
Do you ever go out and get a couple of cheeseburgers?
Yeah.
Just very casual, just like not this big deal of let me show you a good time. Just like do you ever eat cheeseburgers?
Yeah.
To which she's flirting back because she is with that look, the way she's smiling and is like, "Are you flirting with me?"
And then he says, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
I felt like the movie doesn't treat him like a bad guy.
No, I don't feel that way either.
And it's not like, I mean, I think later he says something as well, but it's not like he's continuing to
Be
push
weird.
past, her rejection or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting.
Me too.
And then
So what they found out it's a death moth, and that guy tells them that these had to have been imported because they're from Asia. So someone doesn't just like find one on the ground somewhere.
Right.
Which means that someone bought them internationally and has been raising them. And he says someone loved this.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then we go to Hannibal again, and Clarice offers him a deal where she's going to let him go to this prison where he'll have a nice view and he'll be able to once a week go into the water at
1
the
week
beach.
out of the year.
Oh yeah, I think he can take a stroll like once a week.
Okay.
And then like once a year he's able to go swimming or something like that. And it's this great deal, and she goes, you're not going to get out, but you can. This will be a good
This is the best
idea.
we can do. And she says that this deal is coming from the senator because the woman that Buffalo Bill kidnapped is the senator's daughter.
Yeah. And so he's kind of like, yeah, I'll help, but it's going to be a quid pro quo, which I've always not known what that meant, and it's Latin and it means favor for a favor. So that's when I think this is actually when he's asking her questions about her personal life, and they're trading information back and forth.
Yeah.
And he's able to say that that moth is also in the severed head. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and is that
No,
when
she told him that.
Oh, okay.
Because she's like, you want to tell me who that person is and why we found the moth in that person's head too?
That's right.
And while they're having this conversation, Chilton is listening to them because he feels like this woman's getting the upper hand on him. Not just her, but like the FBI are just saying, screw you, this is our job.
Yeah.
You just have to listen. So he's listening to them secretly, and there's some payoff with him later.
Yeah. And so then we find out, that the killer's somewhat really like around Hannibal and had a relationship. I think this is when we find out that the killer had a relationship with the man with the severed head.
Yeah, because that man with the severed head was a past patient of Hannibal. And that person told him that he was concerned for his lover because his lover had become violent and killed a transient. And I think skinned the transient.
Oh, yeah.
So can you please talk to him?
Yeah. And so, but it's still like coded and he's still playing a game. And then I think that's when they start moving him or
well, so soon after I think it might even be like soon after this next scene is Chilton is talking to Hannibal and is like, that was a phony deal. They duped you.
Yes.
I'm going to get you a real deal.
And he transfers him. And when he transfers him, that's when Hannibal gets put into the iconic mask, which is like, one of the great looking things on film,
Makes him look deranged.
Yeah. And he's getting transferred. He's getting put on a plane, all of this craziness. And then the senator's wife, the mother, comes out and
she is
has
the senator.
She is the senator.
Yeah. She can be a senator too, Micah.
No, I thought.
No, I know. She is the senator.
Great. So the senator comes out and she and Hannibal have a conversation together, and he has the upper hand, and he's saying some really rotten things. He's not a good guy.
He does eventually tell, basically when he's satisfied with making someone feel small, he tells her the man's name is Louis Friend. He is 5'11", 100 and something pounds. He told me he lived in Philadelphia, but he could have given me a wrong address. So he gives a lot of information about a person.
And then, for some reason, I think they're not transferring him at this scene, and they put him in that art gallery.
Is that an art gallery?
Well, it looks like one. Anyway, that's what it looks like to my eyes.
I love the set design of that.
Cool.
Is just superb. It's so amazing. It's amazing.
Just a cell in the middle of a room.
I have a feeling that they might just still be holding him before they transfer him to the prison that she promised. So it's like a holding cell.
Yeah. And then
Oh no, this is the thing. If the daughter is not found alive, the deal's off. So I think they are just waiting to see if they find her.
Yes. And then so he's in that area, that holding cell, and Jodie Foster like sneaks in basically, and she starts speaking with him.
Gives him his drawings back,
and she's kind of because he's mad about the fake deal, and she's trying to gain her
his trust back
again. And then he's saying, what does this guy want? What does this guy need? And she's saying, well, he wants skin. He wants women and stuff. And he goes, no, that's just a byproduct. What does he want? And what does he need? And then he says he covets. And what do you covet most? Or how does coveting start? Is that what he says?
Yeah, it's something that you're surrounded by every day.
Yeah, and it's like you covet what's around you or something like that. And that's just sitting there, and as a viewer, unless you're crazy smart, you're like, okay, what does that mean, though?
Yeah. And you're right there with Clarice, because she has no idea either. And he does tell her, you have all that you need in the papers. That your person is waiting for you in those papers.
And also, I don't remember what the anagram was, but Lewis' friend was also
I can't remember, but
an anagram.
Yeah.
And she said, your anagrams are showing when she came in. So they're having this exchange. And then this is when she talks about
the silence of the lambs.
Silence of the Lambs. So take over.
So he goes back to asking her about why she ran away after living only 2 months in Montana. And she talks about a night where she woke up and she was hearing screaming. And she was led out to the barn, and there were a bunch of lambs in the barn just screaming.
They sounded like
sounded like a person screaming.
Yeah.
And she knew that they were to be slaughtered. And in her fear, she's only a child, opens the gate, but they don't leave. They're just still there screaming. So she grabs one and runs away. But she could only run so far with it because she's just a kid and it's a lamb.
And tears are starting to form on Jodie's face.
And Hannibal's.
That was so this is the moment where if you're an Academy...
This is the Oscar-winning scene.
This is like, okay, they're probably getting the Oscar, and then after this scene, you're like, they're for sure getting the Oscar.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Because he's cheering up.
Mm-hmm. And I just
don't know how he does that.
No, and the way his character talks is just, it's so fast, and it's just this like, the accent that he chooses is so like refined and like prudy.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's just so perfect. It's perfect. But so she runs away with the lamb, but she doesn't make it very far because it's so cold and the lamb is so heavy. So they find her and they send her to an orphanage. And he asks her what happened to the lamb. And she says it got slaughtered. And he says, he kind of finishes the rest for her and is like, so your goal in life was to, become an FBI agent, like get into the FBI, because hopefully you can be someone that helps the little lambs that need help.
Yeah. And
so like Catherine's a little lamb for you, isn't she? And she just is like, I don't know.
And then you won't hear their screams, hence the silence of the lambs. Cool title.
Yes.
Just going to say that. Good job, Thomas Harris, on that title. So there's the lamb story. And then we have what was referred to by Jonathan Demme as the movie within the movie. Because now we have like a 3-act action sequence.
This movie is less than 2 hours and it feels longer than that, and not in a bad way.
No, it's so lean.
Yeah.
And so I was going to try and make a joke about cutting people up, and I thought, nah, let's not. But this is the iconic scene where Hannibal escapes. So he's getting handcuffed and getting his food. He drew a picture of Clarice with a lamb. Mm-hmm. And then he picks a lock because he got a pen way earlier in the movie.
From Chilton.
Yeah. And I like how he gets it from him.
Of course.
Specifically. Because that guy just...
Poetic justice.
Yes. And he just thinks he knows everything.
Yeah.
And Hannibal still outthinks him.
Yeah.
And he gets out of the cuffs, bites one of the cops, and then he beats the other one in this very kind of like a maestro.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And he's just beating this guy to death. And the police don't find out for a while because he has enough time to disembowel and like rip open this guy.
And kind of like crucify him.
Yeah, set him up in this crazy thing with like a backlit light. Mm-hmm. And the cops finally see that this elevator is going up and down.
Mm. Oh man, this whole sequence is just so scary.
It's really wild because sometimes when someone goes into a genre having not much experience with the genre, a director, it's a disaster because they don't get the genre. And then sometimes you get a movie like this where it's so different from any other types of this genre that it totally reinvigorates and changes the genre forever.
I mean, the closest thing it reminds me to is like Get Out, because we have Jordan Peele, who is a comedian and known for doing sketches, is now one of the most popular horror directors. So popular that he's like the new Rod Serling.
Yeah, he's like the new Hitchcock in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
And so it's just really insane that, this is a big action set piece. And, I haven't seen his other movies. Maybe they do have some action in them.
Yeah.
But, he handles it deftly. It's crazy how good the action is. And, they come in, they see this horrific image. And
there's a police officer down, but he's still alive.
And his face is all cut up and crazy.
Uh-huh.
And so they're rushing him out. And then while they're doing that, they're going down the elevator and there's blood dripping onto the police officer who's down. And then they realize like Hannibal's on the roof of the elevator. So they go through. Some other cops like are up a couple of floors and they shoot the body because it's not moving. And they're like, you better move. Like, you better put your hands up or we're going to shoot. They shoot him in the leg and he doesn't move at all. Then they pull down the elevator and he flops out and we don't actually see any.
We see the back of his head.
Just the back, and we're
but
like,
then it
okay,
quick cuts to the ambulance.
And then the police officer who's down sits up and pulls off his face, and it's Hannibal.
He skinned the guy's face off.
Yes. I wonder if there's like a Mythbusters on how possible that is.
Oh, I wonder. There is a Dwight doing it. So,
Which, if you haven't seen that episode of The Office, it's
one of the funniest ones.
It's in season 6.
Stress Relief Part 1.
No, it's 2 because it's after. 2? No, it's 1. It's 1.
Okay.
It's one of the funnier episodes of the show.
Watch Part 1 and 2.
And Dwight cuts off the face of
a CPR dummy,
and he goes, and he turns around, and everyone freaks out,
and they're like, "Why'd you have to cut the face off?"
And he's like, "I just wanted to see if it was realistic." And he's like, "Turns out it's pretty realistic."
No, he says it didn't really look realistic in the movie. Turns out it is.
So, and I think this goes back to this goes back to Anthony Hopkins. You know how he was saying like, this is cartoonish.
Yeah.
So he's sitting there reading the script, and he's not thinking, I really need to get in the mind of someone. I'm sure he's thinking this to some extent, but someone who would rip off someone's face and put it on my face. He's like, oh, that's kind of wild.
Yeah.
I better be kind of insane in this movie so that this scene doesn't feel out of left field. I'm an actor. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I act.
Yeah, definitely.
I just love that so much.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
It's very refreshing.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. So, we are, I feel like, missing a lot of Buffalo Bill stuff, but I think that's okay. But the movie periodically cuts back.
It's because I'm scared of him.
Yeah, cuts to Catherine in the hole screaming for help.
Yeah.
There's really loud music. You kind of find out that maybe they're in a basement. I don't know. He is naked a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You see him sewing skin at some point. You see him putting makeup on, and then you see him also like making her put on lotion to keep her skin moisturized.
The lotion in the basket. Ugh. That's
his whole performance makes me like, it really makes my stomach hurt. I think this movie compared to the last one, this one got to me a lot more. And I think that we spent more time with the murderer. And I think that it's almost weird to compare, but like the nature of this person and how sick this person is was much more explored than the other character.
Sure. Yeah.
And it just really got to me. Oh, it's so scary. But
yeah, on this viewing, Manhunter freaked me out more.
Yeah.
But Silence of the Lambs, the first time I saw it, freaked me out a lot.
Yeah.
Because the first time I saw it, and part of it was the context, which we talked about.
Right.
The first time I saw it, it was one of those movies that made my stomach turn, and it made me feel like I felt like I got caught like lying from my parents or something. Like I shouldn't have watched it.
Yeah, because you're seeing something that it feels wrong. Like what's like how the things are happening and what's happening.
And this time, it didn't hit me quite in that way.
That's okay. Yeah.
But Manhunter did, and I have a feeling if I go and rewatch Manhunter, more like when I go and rewatch that masterpiece, I'll be like, yeah, this is not as scary as the first time because I know what's going to happen, and I'm not as like, how much are they going to show? What's going to...
Totally. And then also the girl, Catherine, lures the dog down into the well, into the hole, so she now has leverage over Buffalo Bill.
Yeah. And then Clarice is hanging out with her friend, and they're talking about the coveting.
They're going over the notes, case notes.
You covet what's close to you, and then they go,
what was the... Okay, go ahead. Never mind.
He knew the first victim. And that's the key moment. So now Clarice is going to revisit.
She goes to Belvedere, Ohio, I think.
Yeah, and she goes, I think it's this guy. I'm pretty sure I got it figured out. And she's calling Jack Crawford, and he's going, we got his name. We got his address. We're headed there right now.
And they're going to like Chicago?
St. Louis, I think. But no, that was the previous movie.
That was the last movie. I'm pretty sure they're going to like Chicago or Philadelphia.
Okay. And what's not funny, but when the first time they cut this movie together, it was the police show up, and then it was Clarice shows up. It was not intercut like it is in this movie, where it looks like
you don't like that's a twist.
Yeah, and Jonathan Demme saw the first cut, and he was like, "Oh, those scenes should be intercut." And the editor in the interview I saw, the editor said, "I stupidly I didn't originally put the scenes intercut like that." He said stupidly, like he was a big
I'm
idiot.
the editor. I should be the one that should know that. That's so funny.
But yeah, so there's this great scene where, and I wonder what an audience back then would have thought, because I feel like a lot of people have done this in other movies.
Yeah.
But you're seeing the police come up and stuff, and Clarice is interviewing, and she's figuring it out. She's going to the victim's house, all this stuff, which we don't have to cover.
I think it's interesting that she's upstairs in the girl's room, and she's looking out the window, and she's pretty much seeing what this girl sees.
Yeah.
And then she goes to another room and it looks out that window and pretty much sees what's seen out of that window. It just reminds me of the last movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he was trying to see how the killer saw it, and she's trying to see how the victim saw it.
Yeah. Because the victim has a connection with...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so anyway, she's doing that, and she's kind of figuring it out, and she's going to go to this house as like her last lead so far. And as she's going, it's intercutting all this stuff, and then the police come in, and
there's no one there.
It's totally abandoned. And then she knocks on the door, and our killer shows up. And we've seen this crazy killer, and we as the audience are just going,
we're screaming.
No.
We're screaming.
No.
Yeah.
No. And we know she hasn't called for backup, nothing like this.
Because she doesn't know who this person is. She actually goes there thinking that an old woman lives there.
Yeah.
So he lets her in because he's trying to find a card for a person that she should call about this, about like her son or something. And it's just, he says things that now, as someone who's seen a lot of movies like this, he's asking questions that's like, oh, huge red flag. He's like, so you guys even close yet?
Yeah.
What about you guys got like fingerprints, name, like anything? And, she's just like, no, she's feeling a lot edgier. The house is in shambles. So I think that would kind of set someone off immediately. But it's just his acting is so good when he finds the card and he holds it out to her. They are several feet apart.
Yeah.
She would have to walk to him to get it, which is him luring her like bait. Come get the card for me. And she asks him, do you think I could use your phone? She's getting more suspicious. And his reaction is just priceless because he just starts laughing. Almost I got you now.
Yeah. And then he takes off.
Yeah.
And he's got a gun, and she fires at him, I believe.
She doesn't yet.
She doesn't. Okay. And then she goes down the stairs.
Yep. Into this maze.
Yeah. And the setup of this, they do a good job of, it's a very confusing setup, but it also, I feel like geographically does make sense.
Yeah, and I think I'm sure this is part of actual training, which I would never think to do, where she's closing doors behind her.
Yeah.
That is so smart.
Yeah, what's cool, and Jodie Foster did do some training with the FBI and stuff, and they actually filmed at Quantico, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Which is very interesting. Yeah. And the Christy Zhao, the production designer, said, Demme, we can't film here. It's so boring and ugly. And then he's like, no, I want it to look like this. And then it'll get crazier
Yeah,
as we go.
yeah. That's funny.
But so she's going around, she's trying to find this guy, and she's very worried, and she's hearing the woman in the well screaming.
Uh-huh.
And then
oh man, and her acting
she
is
sees
so
the skin suit.
good. Oh yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah.
Once again, great job special effects guys though.
Yeah, but Catherine yelling in the well, like screaming for her to get her out, and like Clarice can't do anything.
Yeah.
And she's telling her, basically like saying like, police will be here any minute. And she's just saying, F you, get me out of here. Like complete desperation.
And then the lights go out.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning of the movie, we had seen Buffalo Bill playing with night vision goggles. He puts them on. And for the rare point in the movie, we are not in Clarice's head. We're in his head.
Mm-hmm.
And he's toying with her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing some great acting just in her like feeling around and stuff. I love all that. And then I guess a lot of people ask her like how she was able to do that in the dark and how they filmed that. And she's like, we filmed it in the light. And then we just put a green filter over it. That's like, what are you talking about?
Sorry, movie magic sometimes isn't so magical.
And so doing that, and then the guy, I think he reaches out to touch her or something.
Well,
no, he pulls out his gun.
Yeah, he does that several times.
And he pulls back the hammer. Mm-hmm. She hears it and she fires. And then everyone on set is going, well, how is she going to see him? And then someone said, well, back in World War II, they used to black out windows. What if we did that and she accidentally shot a window? And then like 20 minutes later, they're like, okay, let's shoot that window out. And that'll make sense. They didn't have that in the script that the light pours in. But the light pours in. I love that shot and the way Buffalo Bill's hands are like crinkled up as he's taking his final breath. And she's reloading her gun as quickly as she can. Crazy.
Yeah.
And she's now silenced the lambs, one would hope.
Yeah. This one, at least.
Yeah. And then they're at this FBI thing.
She graduates.
That's the thing. And she gets a phone call. Who's on the other end of the phone? It's Dr. Hannibal Lecter. And he says, don't even bother tracing the call, this, that, and the other thing. And she's like, where are you? And he goes, just don't worry about it.
He says, don't worry, I'm not going to come after you. The world's too interesting with you in it. Like it would be less interesting if you were gone.
And he says, I'm having an old friend for dinner. And then the movie starts rolling credits. Mm-hmm. And to me, this is a perfect ending to a movie that, like, I'm excited that there's another movie, but also there doesn't ever have to be another one.
I agree.
It's like that perfect edge of this totally sets up a sequel, but it's also fine if there isn't one.
I agree.
So, great movie.
Yeah.
Really good rewatch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what do we think? Closing thoughts?
Love it.
That's it, huh?
I mean, it's just I think the investigation was a little bit easier to understand in this movie than the last one.
Yeah.
But we did say in the last one that I don't think that was a disadvantage of the movie.
Well, it feels like Manhunter is more of the Zodiac approach, where you're just trying to keep up with the clues and the facts the whole movie.
Because there's so much. And this is much more profiling.
Yeah. It's a little more clear-cut, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh dang it. Great movie.
Yeah.
I'm glad it won Best Picture. I was trying to think, and I was going, this is the last Best Picture movie we'll ever cover. And then I thought, oh, wait a second. There's at least 2 movies, Godfather 1 and Godfather 2, that we hope to cover at some point.
They both won Best Picture?
And, yeah, they both won.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, there's still potential that we can cover a Best Picture winner. Okay. And there might be a couple other series, but I mean,
we covered Lord of the Rings.
I don't think so. That's what I mean. We covered Lord of the Rings in this, and I don't think any others have sequels, or at least 2 sequels. Anyway, I think that's it. And folks, trust me on this. Trust me. You might think, well, I listened to Silence of the Lambs. That's the best of the Hannibal movies. I'm out. I'll wait till their next series. Folks, you have got to listen to the next episode. We have an interview with someone who was involved in the production of the movie Hannibal that we're covering next week. An actual person that worked on the movie. So that is like a dream come true for us. and one hope that we had on doing this podcast, that we'd be able to talk to someone who worked on the movie we're covering.
Mhm.
So that's next week. We're real excited about that. I won't tell you anymore. It's not an actor, though, so don't think we got like Anthony Hopkins or something like that. But yeah, so
We
tune
got
in next
Julianne
week.
Moore.
Yeah, it's Julianne Moore. Just kidding. This month on Patreon, it's still Gremlins 2, the new batch. And then next month is Zoolander. So get prepared for...
Walking down the runway.
When you go to www.patreon.com/MICAHMCCAW, link in the description of this episode, you're going to get the light side of the MPU with Gremlins 2 and Zoolander. So thank you for listening, everybody. We will catch you next week when we cover Ridley Scott's Hannibal. Who's that peeking behind the bars? That's Hannibal. Who's that played by 4 different stars? That's Hannibal. And whose face is detachable? That's Hannibal. And who's everybody's favorite cannibal? That's Hannibal.